in truth, Liverpool didn't look like scoring. I've got to say, if I wanted to watch a team from Merseyside play tedious, pedestrian, impotent football, I'd watch Everton. And I was left on my knees wondering, do you think Liverpool want to relegate Everton more than they crave Champions League football?
Yeah, maybe.
That was really the moral
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford, New York, and the crap part of West Hollywood, California, it's the Men in Blazers podcast.
Oh, we back. Like Ki Hui Kwan from Goonies to the Oscars via true tenacity. What a gent, Dave. Incredible American story.
I mean, beautiful. As he said, it was the definition of the American dream. What an acceptance speech that was. Everything, everywhere, all at once, sweeping everything at the Academy Awards pretty much, except for documentary short feature. And a beautiful, beautiful film, a beautiful story.
What was your favourite film of the year, David, apart from the Rooney documentary?
I mean, I have to say, Living, I thought was just outstanding. The Bill Nye movie, based on the Kurosawa film. That was outstanding. But look, I'm going to say it. It's not going to be the most popular thing. As a feat of filmmaking, for me, it was Top Gun and All Quiet on the Western Front. Two very different military films, but both just outstanding.
They were the same film, just told from two different perspectives.
One the American one, and one a German one. But to me, those two films were my favourites of the year.
Can I say, watching the Oscars with my kids, when they showed the trailer for All Quiet on the Western Front, which we've all seen and marvelled at, my younger son, Ozzy, of whom I'll talk more about on this podcast, he just turned to me and goes, God, that trailer is just like a documentary of Everton's season. Which was really, he didn't say it to be funny, it just came out, and I was like,
it's truth. It's his truth.
God, what am I doing? I will say shout out to Argentina 1985, which I adored. Me and Lionel Messi, he put out an Instagram post about how much he loved that movie. Him and me are movie samesies. I bet you he likes Happy Gilmore a lot too. I also loved, and I'm very, very happy for Sarah Polley, who I think is an incredible human being. I loved Women Talking, which was hard to watch in all of the best ways. But talking about hard to watch, we've got to start up top by really explaining and then touching upon the insane situation that football found itself in England on an extraordinary and really unprecedented weekend. I don't know if this has come to your attention, dear listeners. It is bloody sad. Essentially, British coverage of football, as we will explain, for one entire weekend became ensnared in the United Kingdom's culture wars. I mean, we have our culture wars, they have theirs. It was just really a spiralling, serious crisis, which whole matter began when Gary Lineker, who was a beloved footballer, former Leicester, Everton, Tottenham, Barcelona footballer, England's striker, really a hero, English World Cup goal scorer, turned host of many things, but amongst some BBC Match of the Day. 25 years, I think he's done on Match of the Day, which we'll also describe for those who don't know in a minute. But how would you describe first, Davo, Gary Lineker? Because he's more than just a sports presenter. He's really a national institution.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you said to me before the pod that like we're going to try and come up with an American equivalent, and the first name that popped into my head was Jim Nance, and that's only because Jim Nance, he is the voice of golf, and he himself is an American institution. But it's that level of sportscaster. Jim Nance, of course, was not a huge athlete. I don't think he wasn't a big college or pro athlete. Didn't have this incredible career of representing his country, doing all these kind of things. But the Masters broadcast is about as close as you get in American television to the institution that is Match of the Day.
That's so interesting. I mean, if you think about people who didn't do the sporting thing, I'd probably go Costas, because he's got the voice of conscience of Costas. If Costas had won multiple Super Bowl rings, essentially I think of him as if Charles Barkley and Megan Rapinoe, just fused into one being. With, I guess, Megan Rapinoe like politics. We do need to do a quick segue, because You know, it's important to remember match of the day is not a lot of live football. There's not as much historically as you'd imagine in Britain, because they're always worried. Remember, Britain, a tiny island, they're worried if they put live Premier League football on, no one would go and watch your Gillinghams and your Bristol Rovers. They'd all be watching Chelsea, Manchester United, tiny island and all. So essentially, match of the day became this British institution. Every top flight game, the First Division when it was that, now the Premier League, Britain, now elder Britons, because most people are now getting it right off their phone, but elder Britons essentially watch Saturday night edited down into an hour and a half every single Premier League game. Gary Lineker hosts late on a Saturday night, and it used to be that everyone would get out at the pub and then go and watch match of the day. My dad, for instance, all day on a Saturday, Judge Ivor will pick up the phone and he won't say 1726 or whatever you say in England now to answer the phone. He'd just shout down the phone as if it was a common thing. He'd answer the phone, my dad, on a Saturday. Don't tell me the scores! I'm waiting for match of the day! and people thought that was a sane behaviour. But back to Gary Lineker. Over the past 6 or 7 years, he's become quite outspoken on political issues. BBC's publicly funded. It's meant to be independent of the government. And Gary Lineker, massive Twitter presence, has gone into Brexit, the environment, LGBTQ plus issues. Qatar was really fantastically articulate on that issue. And now this. He tweeted that the Conservatives' immigration plan to keep asylum seekers out of the country is a, quote, immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in a language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 1930s. This is a policy called the small boats policy, in which they're trying to take people who are seeking asylum, and essentially people who come into Britain seeking asylum will now be arrested and deported, even though it's not quite clear, and the government say this themselves, that it's actually will not breach human rights policy. Anyway, Gary Lineker, wisely or not, compared the language to Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And the BBC, again, publicly funded, always seeks to be independent now. It asked him to stand down, to step off match of the day. And it is super complicated. And what happened then spiraled out of control. And Davo, I cannot wait to hear what you think of this. 6 presenters of match of the day, all in their own way. National heroes. Ian Wright, the great Arsenal striker. Alan Shearer, the pride of the North, one of the greatest Premier League strikers of all time. And more said, if Gary Lineker's not on, we will not be on. Then the commentators, the sportscasters said, we stand with Gary Lineker. You cannot force us to be silent. And then the players said, we're not going to speak to the BBC, because to speak to the BBC, it will become a political act. So essentially, Saturday night, the BBC lost the dressing room, this ridiculous farce of a crisis, which meant that their match of the day, instead of being an hour and a half of sprawling analysis, was played with no theme music, no commentators, essentially just 20 minutes of match highlights. It was a remarkable madness. It ended this morning with news Gary Lineker is going to return to the BBC. BBC are going to review their social media policy. And Gary Lineker, who's expected to get an apology, tweeted that the row has been quite difficult, quote, but it doesn't compare to fleeing your home. Davo, what do you make of it all?
So I have got to go back to principles on these issues and also try and find commonalities. And this is something that we've experienced in the US. I mean, there have been people, American sports broadcasters, fired from ESPN when they tweeted on political issues. By the way, on both sides of the spectrum, we've seen it in the US. I think when you deal with issues of free speech, you've got to put yourself, I think probably broadly, Roger, you and I, though I don't really condone the comparison of this to 1930s Nazi Germany or the Holocaust.
I'd agree on that.
I brought, which I think is, and by the way, this is also the policy of the US government as well. I wouldn't compare either of these governments to 1930s Germany. Having said that, I think probably broadly you and I sit on the same side of the political spectrum, and think that the plight of migrants into the UK and those seeking political asylum should be treated with more sensitivity than that. But I think in any free speech issue, you have to not be in the position of just defending free speech for those who you agree with, and you've got to think about what if it was, somebody whose political beliefs or political speech you didn't agree with, and then it gets to the issue of a free market. Is it fine for all of his co-workers to say no, we don't want to come on the show either. Yes, I believe that they are allowed to go and do that. And then also, but would it be okay for a broadcaster, whether they're public or private, to say to their employees, you know what, we don't really want you to disparage us at the point that you're on air, and the government are not his employer. The BBC, by charter, is meant to be independent of the government, even though they have several, people from the government sitting in governance over the BBC. And so, therefore, it becomes an enormous mess. Do I think that sports broadcasters should be using that platform that is built from sports to be expressing their political beliefs all over? I don't personally love it, but at the same time, free speech you shouldn't always love. It should be protected because it's important for it to be free.
Yeah, I mean, this is so complicated and such a wormhole of English politics and English culture wars. And I'm not going to get too knee deep in it. My goal here was really for our audience to frame the issue, let the listeners decide where they come out. The BBC, the ridiculous part of all of this, just taking on Lineker in this moment, just like they took on footballers. If you remember, during COVID, when the government were just reeling and didn't know what to do with, their first target was football. It's just a tabloid ability to just attack footballers and try and deflect from awful moments of government crisis. And it does feel like they took on Gary Lineker, hoping that the tabloid media would just pile onto him and almost divert from their own chaos. Because the BBC being, quote, apolitical and independent, their BBC chairman, who's been directing and clearly leading a lot of the flack aimed at Gary Lineker, is a gentleman called Richard Sharp, who, he runs the BBC as the chairman, currently a Conservative Party bigwig funder who got the job after optics, helping Boris Johnson get a slightly weird $1 million plus loan from a Canadian financier when he was Prime Minister. I mean, this is British culture war crap. And the funny thing is, and this is actually not funny at all, TBH, the stick to football crowd who always rear their head when something like this occurs, both in England and also in the United States, stick to sports. We hear here, sports is inherently political. It's never been more political. When you place a World Cup in Qatar, when Manchester United are possibly going to be taken over by investors from the Gulf, when Manchester City, Newcastle, PSG have already become tools of geopolitical power plays, when the women's game, with the World Cup coming, is rife with the players having to take on their own federations in the battle for equality. Ultimately, it's impossible to talk about football without talking about the world. It's what I love about the game, that is merely a reflection, for good or for bad, of all of it. Match of the day will be back on. Gary Lineker will get his apology, but this has been a moment when football itself, just the chaos that surrounds it, was honestly paralysing and awful to watch from over here.
Yeah, and I think, look, I echo what you said before we got into this. Match of the Day is such a massive institution in Britain. What the government, I don't believe this is the PM, but what branches of the UK government here, they've just made Gary Lineker so much bigger. It's enormous. It's almost like this was Gary Lineker's own PR who put in this situation. Of course, this has awoken a bunch of hypocrisy on both sides. Free speech, if it's going to be defended, has to be defended for everybody, whichever side. And we've seen political pundits on the other side, that for many may see as the wrong side, turfed out of their jobs with no outcry whatsoever. So anyway, but there you go. Gary Lineker is back. Match of the Day is back. Football order in Britain. Judge Ivor can sleep again. It's all going to be okay.
Let's get to the football, David.
Okay, we got to talk first, though, about something of a quiet week here at Men in Blazers World Headquarters. Just kidding, of course. It's another mental one. Your JJ Watt interview, which dropped over the weekend as a pod, will be released on YouTube and on television this week. We've also got a Pep Guardiola interview dropping on YouTube. Podcasts every single day this week, including episode 2 of Vamos, presented by Bud Light with Hercules Gomez.
Davo, we absolutely loved episode 1 and are genuinely giddy about the development of this project with Herc and producer Juan Castro. run it back this week, and they will deliver episode 2. Look for it on our pod feed on Thursday. And as for that Pep interview, got a feeling you're going to love what he had to say about our hero, Tim Ream. Oh, the King of America. Subscribe to our YouTube. Make sure you don't miss it. It's amazing.
Can't wait to check that out. Can you kick us off today with a toast?
I can, Davo. One note, technical one. Bud, after 6 years of supporting Men in Blazers, I adore it. You know, everyone who's read Reborn in the USA knows that I looked on at a Bud bottle. Oh, just with joy. Not that one. That one's got my face on it. But a normal Bud bottle. I'd look on from it from afar. It's like a beacon of the United States to me. And I also loved when I came here that Bud was the brand that when you watch football and the growth of football, Budweiser was the supporter of football, supported the US women's national team, supported the US men's national team from the very beginning. Watched the 94 World Cup, and it's impossible to, fail to see what a muscle Budweiser as a sponsor has been for the growth of the game in the United States. And the good news is Anheuser-Busch is stepping up their investment in the game in the US with the World Cup coming. But they've also moved everything in football, starting with the US women's team and the men's team, to Bud Light, home of the mighty Spuds McKenzie. And that is why we are riding with Bud Light right now. It is very, very meaningful to us, I want to say, in this moment, because Bud have vastly expanded their support of Men in Blazers in the process, which will allow us to do more, to hire more producers, to put more of our suboptimality in your ears. And in that spirit, I want to raise my first Bud Light of the day to Cristiano Ronaldo, who in scenes, his team dropped to second in the Saudi Pro League, Davo, and he stormed off the field, down the tunnel, kicked over a ton of water bottles and went berserk, essentially did what it says on the tin after failing to score, losing the game, and hearing fans chant Messi, Messi, Messi at him in the closing stages. I mean, dude goes all the bloody way to Saudi Arabia and still can't escape Lionel's shadow. And Ronaldo's team were clipped 1-0 by Al Ittihad in the Saudi Pro League. The defeat marked the second match in a row in which the 38-year-old Ronaldo failed to score. Amazing he didn't rip his shirt off in anger. And I will say it's incredible to witness humanly a gent decline with such a lack of self-awareness and humility. I thought it was just me that ended up just our days in that frame of mind. Saudi League, though, Davo, turning into must-watch for all the wrong reasons.
Oh, absolutely. Rog, and Bud Light, excellent. One of the first things I discovered when I moved here for the first time to go to school in 1985. Yes, I was of drinking age at that point in the US. Bud Light introduced 1982. It's got its own history as well, Roger. Okay, to the football. Fulham, 0. Arsenal, 3. The league leaders storm Fortress Cottage and deliver an emphatic victory in this London derby. 3 first-half goals, all assisted by Belgian new boy Leandro Trossard and finished by Gabriel number 1, Gabriel number 2, that's Gabby Martinelli, and Martin Odegaard. They do the business, and as if their afternoon couldn't have got any better, Gabriel number 3, Gabriel Jesus, returned to the field for the first time since a World Cup injury that required knee surgery. Wonderful to see him return. Arsenal look as potent as ever and retain their 5-point lead atop the table. I should say that Gabriel number 4, my godson Gabriel, who's a massive Fulham fan, was in the stands weeping at every single Arsenal goal.
God, that feel-good buzz of achievable dreams is back for Arsenal. They rolled in off 4 straight, some of them heart-stopping wins, but the massive news was not that Gabriel Jesus is back on the bench at Arsenal for the first time since the World Cup. No, it's about another G, Davo, because Greg Berhalter was at the game.
Whoa.
Lord knows why, in what capacity. Why do you think he was there, David?
Well, it can't have been anything to do with the football. So maybe the fashion, maybe the kicks, to see the kicks, see what who's it, KSI, see what he's wearing. I don't know.
See how many G's there are in the word Gunners. And the reality was he and everybody there, I love that Fortress Cottage, saw a coronation march of a game. Fulham under the cosh from the very beginning. Saka attempting to torment our boy Anthony Robinson, turned a Martinelli cross into his own net. But Anthony Robinson knew it was offside. That's why he unfurled the kind of finishing the US needs from its number 9. Jedi got it all. Want to show Greg Berhalter, who's nothing to do right now with the US men's national team. Oh, I may be your goal-scoring solution. Fulham, though, honestly, seems shattered. Without the suspended How Paulinho, their midfielder was overrun. Fulham lost all 4 of the games in which he's been absent this season, but he no doubt worried in the medium term about all those Liverpool Paulinho rumours. And with Mitrovic, no goals in 9 games now, looking emasculated. The reprieve was for but a moment within 3 minutes. Gabriel, right off a corner with Ben Wright screening Leno 1-0, and it would soon be 2. Full length of the field, 4 players, 11-12 touches. Honestly, the second was like a 99-yard kick return of a goal. Gabriel Martinelli rising up over a cowering Anthony Robinson to head home. 61st goal of the season for Arsenal. Davo, as many as they scored in the entirety of last season. It's honestly, it was a stroll, it was a breeze, it was magnificent to witness.
Yeah, and that final goal, the Odegaard goal, he makes it look so simple. He makes difficult things look so simple. That little sidestep in the box and that clean finish. I mean, brilliant. A beautiful performance. Another a game that you looked at, a potential banana peel for Arsenal, Rog. Going to Fortress Cottage, going to a place where Fulham have played such great football this season, and to beat them 3-0 all in the first half. Pretty remarkable performance. That impressed me. It impressed me a lot.
And their fans, we're going to win the league. We're going to win the league. They sound for almost the whole second half. The team honestly could have scored 5, 6, 7 in that first half. It was such a romp. Just an exhausted Fulham couldn't live with them. And their interchanging attack. Odegaard, as you say, that brilliant reward. But at the same time, it was like a training goal. That's what it was. It really was his 10th of a season now. Surging symbol of Arsenal fans' joy, not just in this season, but when they say and see that they've got 3 of the 4 youngest players to score 10 plus goals this season. In fact, they're still the only team with more than one player to have done so. It's another lovely moment. And then, I mean, if they can't have all the joy, Leandro Trossard, who we've already lauded as one of the January transfer signings of the year, he became the first player in Premier League history to deliver a hat-trick of assists in just the first 45 minutes of the game. Dude fits like a glove in a way Mudryk does, only in Tom Burley's Twitter likes. And capping a remarkable weekend for Arsenal Football Club, Jesus came back on 76 minute. They say he walks on water, then turns it into wine. Oh, I believe in Jesus, the Arsenal number 9. Arsenal season, Dave, I'm going to be lost without him. And to see him come back on, injured, remember, in the World Cup, to rapturous applause. His team scoring freely in his absence with just 11 games to go. And having Arteta say, yeah, he's got to earn his place like in any other team. It's an incredible sign. Arsenal suddenly have depth, David.
Yeah, no, he's returning at exactly the right part of the season. Competition for places, that may explain the 3-goal first half explosion. A lot of players just knowing that they've got to impress their manager to keep their places and keep their minutes. And that's the sign of a very, very healthy team, when they play well, when there is competition for places.
Yeah, and Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Trossard, now Jesus. Just a team with now suddenly so many ways to hurt opponents. They are cruising 5 points clear again. 100 wins for Arteta as manager. Jesus back to lead the title charge. Unbeaten in all 9 of their London derbies. I think they've won all 5 now on the road. That is the kind of statistic that makes you think of the words Premier League title holders elect. But we got to talk about the true moment of the match, when in the second half, maybe the action dimming just a bit, the cameras cut to Mick Jagger, 117-year-old looking Mick Jagger at the Arsenal in the DILF cap. He was wearing a cap in little print that said DILF. I mean, first of all, dude is like possibly even older than Tim Reed. And what I want to know, David, what do you think the D in DILF could possibly stand for? I thought it may stand for like dead body I'd like to make sweet, sweet love to.
Yeah.
To paraphrase.
No, it could stand for a lot of things. Really, he should be in the GDILF hat at this point, because I think he's a grandfather.
GDILF.
I think, yeah, well, that would be, yeah. He's a grandfather several times over. But yeah, I'll have to come back to you with a good answer for D.
Childish Gambino tweeted us that it stands for Damn I Love Football, which I just adore in every way. God, that would be beautiful. But I've got a feeling that it is probably, knowing Mick Jagger and his work and just his, the intensity, the honesty, the authenticity of his lyric writing. Drew Backup tweeted us to say, undoubtedly, DILF stands for Damn I Like Farting. America. What else could it be?
Okay, here we go. South London now. Crystal Palace 0, Manchester City. It was a staring contest, Rog, with struggling Palace, a team that, lest we forget, has given City troubles in the recent past, but no such trouble on this occasion, as City claimed all 3 points in a relatively ho-hum affair thanks to a second-half penalty from Erling Haaland, his 28th Premier League goal of the season, like a Viking Pac-Man, Rog, who gobbles goals instead of pellets. And with that result, Palace remain winless in 2023, worrying times for them. But City, they continue nipping at Arsenal's heels, just 5 points behind them.
Oh, your Palace manager, Patrick Vieira, ex-Arsenal legend, asked before the game if any Arsenal teammates had been in touch with a couple of pointers for how to upset City in the title race. And he just looked sadly at the camera and said, no. And the way Palace played, honestly didn't look like it. In Swan City, desperate to close the gap they played before. Arsenal did, roiled by their latest scandal. Kyle Walker under police investigation after appearing to expose himself in a Manchester bar, which was caught on security camera. He was on the bench. And the game began with Palace compact, denying City space between the lines, and brave even when City were in the box, repelling them with a fervour and a belief that when they were opened up, Jackie Grealish would just miscalibrate his shot. I think Peter Drury said at halftime, Crystal Palace, the epitome of efficiency. 72% possession City had, but Palace gave them really so few true chances on goal. Even Haaland was rusty when they came, misfiring, scooping over from close range. Crystal Palace, as you say, not won at home since October, struggled to score all season. But City, they had to sweat. They had to grind. It was like the best of times, the worst of times for Palace fans.
Yeah. When I was back in the UK last weekend, I spent some time with our mate, Crystal Palace chairman Steve Parish, and so many good things happening at that club right now. Amazing stuff going on with their new academy in Beckenham and their youth teams competing, against some of the biggest clubs, in England in the Premier League. But worrying times for the Premier League side right now. Defended superbly for this game, but really couldn't muster anything all season. They've struggled to get the ball anywhere near the area. No touches inside the box. No ability to push defences back, and they just sat and only even sort of seemed like they were interested in attacking after they'd conceded the penalty and went 1-0 down. Very frustrated fans right now.
An agony, 76 minute, short corner, exhausted Elise, tried to shut down Gundogan at the very cusp of the area, and he just saw it coming before it even happened. It was like seeing a car crash you're unable to stop. He just caught him, tired legs, tired mind, overstretched foot. You switch off for 1 second in this league, at this level, and you will be punished. Up-stepped that giant Norwegian wardrobe, Haaland, who in truth had touched the ball very little in the second half, seized his moment now, took a deep breath, and then rolled the penalty home, charging away with relief to knee slide right into the TV cameras with his big wooden teeth just beaming, slicing terrifyingly ever closer to the lens. And he was asked after the game what he thinks of inside of his head before he takes a penalty. And he just goes, the celebration. For talking about celebration, City 1-0 against the Palace. Bloody hard game, needed the penalty, but their celebrations, David, at the whistle, the ebullience, the hugs, Pep blowing kisses, Haaland jumping around like an untrained Leon Berger let off its leash in some Scando Park. Two of them just saluting the fans together awkwardly like Pep and his large Scando adult son. Didn't really seem to reflect the performance, did it?
Yeah, but look, sometimes in the Premier League, Rog, you just have to win games when you're not playing particularly well. And we should say Palace defended superbly in this game, even though they didn't offer much of a threat. They found a way to get 3 points and hopefully find a way to click more like their North London adversaries next weekend.
4 wins on the trot, sense of the inevitability for City returning any which way, and Lord knows what state the table will be in the time of their next Premier League game against Liverpool on April the 1st. Palace, though, position is 12th, but the mood is dire. Real danger of being sucked backwards into the mire. Unwanted record. They became the first team to fail to have a shot on target in 3 successive Premier League games since Opta started record data 2003-2004. They got Brighton and then Arsenal up next. That relegation zone, 5 points, continues to separate 9 teams. From Palace right there in 12th to the very bottom. And that relegation scrap has really turned into a war film where both sides have used up their ammo, thrown away the guns, useless, just fighting with fists and helmets. It is bloody grim, David.
Yeah, if you're a team in those bottom 7, as you well know, Rog, it's like every single weekend is just an appointment with destiny. It's going to be lots of twists and turns before the season comes to an end. One of those teams went to Manchester and drew 0-0 with Manchester United. Man United 0, Southampton 0. United's league struggles continue as they follow up that 7-0 beatdown by Liverpool with a goalless draw against the struggling Saints. The big headline in this one, a 34th minute red card for Casemiro for a dangerous challenge on Carlos Alcaraz. Casemiro's second red card of the season after his sending off against Palace last month. It means he'll receive a 4-game suspension. But despite having just the 10 men United gave as good as they got here, it was only some wonderful goalkeeping on both ends that kept it scoreless. Ultimately, United still in 3rd place, but now just 2 clear of Tottenham. Southampton still rock bottom, but having taken 4 points from their last 2 games, they're now just 2 from safety.
Home game against bottom team seemed like the ideal chicken soup for the soul for Manchester United after that 7-0 mauling by Liverpool. But Old Trafford reminded just 3 minutes in of the chaos that stands just outside their doors. We want Glazers out. We want Glazers out. Rippled out the Stretford end. And the football really reflected it. They have been slow to start so often under Ten Hag. And with Jadon Sancho really flailing as number 10, they seemed oddly uncohesive. Southampton flickered with their pace. And the game came to life in that 33rd minute. Casemiro saw red, stabbed into the ball, bounced off it, into Alcaraz's shin. And United fans were like, he got the ball! Yes, but the tackle was reckless. Following 3 studs out. That's right, David?
Yeah, it got the ball, doesn't matter. It wasn't his intent, doesn't matter. It just is that tackle. I just laughed, Rog, when we put it up on our social as, Casemiro's red or yellow, and the number of people that says, no, it wasn't even a foul. It was just a flesh wound. That for me was a red card all day. I know it's not always given. There was a similar tackle in the Chelsea game that wasn't given.
On João Felix.
Yeah, it was, which was the same challenge. I just think the ref didn't see it, and then when VAR looked at it, they probably thought it was a yellow. So maybe it would have been incredibly fortunate to get away with a yellow, but I wasn't surprised at all that it was a red.
I mean, that there's 2 positions. The first is, that wasn't a foul, he got the ball. That's a pretty absolutist Manchester United position in that moment. And then the default position is, all we want is consistency. And the work, Chelsea were honestly, as you say, victims of tackles that were just as bad. There is some reality in that. And Ten Hag, we'll talk about Ten Hag in 1 second. What was fascinating was watching Casemiro's reaction to being dismissed. He apologised to his victim on the way off, which was an amazing moment. And then just he sobbed very briefly. The whole team came up to him. David De Gea ran out of goal to console him. Anthony walked up to him and said, "Don't worry, Casemiro, I got this. I'm going to miss a lot of shots as a tribute to you. Just wildly blast them. Don't worry, we got your back." And even the opponents, even Alcaraz came up, and you saw the Southampton players. Normally they're furious when something like this has happened. There was something, the way they hugged him as he exited, he's got the respect of all this human being. But go he did, and that's a 4-match ban for Casemiro. Second red of the season, second in 5 weeks. And this is amazing. As Ten Hag himself said, he said the game was influenced by the referees. There's inconsistency. The players don't know anymore what the policy is. I'm not sure that's why his foot bounced off the ball there. But the second point, Casemiro's really a fair player. in over 500 games in Spain, he was never sent off. That's an insane argument, David. That really, I mean, the reality is, as people who do watch La Liga week in, week out are almost saying, yeah, that's because the referees in Spain actually looked after him and turned the blind eye to it. But he's right on the inconsistency argument. Arguably,
yeah, I mean, to me, it's a specious argument. And even having watched both challenges, and as a Chelsea fan, yes, I would have loved to have seen the opposing player sent off for that challenge on João Felix. It wasn't as bad as that Casemiro challenge, in that Casemiro had more speed. It was more of a lunge for the ball, and he left the ground earlier with 2 feet, and you just don't get away with that, and made that contact so high on the shin. So I think just because it hasn't happened before and it didn't happen in Spain, that's not an argument. Yes, there is inconsistency, but look at the inconsistency on the fans when they get to watch it, and slow-mo and slow-mo and slow-mo and slow-mo again and again and again. The refs, it's just hard. It is a judgment call. It is subjective. But, yes, the game was influenced by the referees, and it was influenced by the referees doing their job.
Yes, at least the inconsistency is consistent. But God, the strange thing about it was United actually had more of the ball and more of the menace when they went down to 10. Weghorst was subbed off for McTominay, which probably pleased United fans no end. Varane forced a save from close range. Could have had arguably at least 2 penalties. Southampton did whatever they could to score, which mostly consisted of trying to get JWP a free kick from James Ward-Prowse range. He grazed the bar with one such arrow and just dropped to his knees. It made a beautiful noise as it scraped the post, just a noise of ruthless efficiency. He dropped to his knees in utter agony. What a footballer he is. And then there was a Theo Walcott. God love Theo Walcott. I mean, honestly, whenever I see him, I'm like, oh my God, somebody exhumed Theo Walcott. I'm always surprised to see him. And he did a half length of the field run-in on goal. And you could see, I've watched it many times. I didn't take pleasure in it, but you could see, God bless him, you could see his self-confidence bleed out of the human being with every step as he got closer to goal. He had all that time, too much time, to review his career, his highs and his lows, think about where it went wrong. I feel for that human being. Bruno had a low drive tipped onto the post, or as they call it in Scotland, we learned that this weekend, the beans on toast, and really numerous chances. It was a great 0-0. For both teams not taken. Huge point for Ruben Selles. Suddenly sensible Southampton. United, desperation, symbolised really by, down the stretch, Marcus Rashford flinging himself to the floor in a fairly inglorious attempt to trick a penalty. But United now have to face up to 4 games without Casemiro, their shield, their inspiration, their everything. And without him, the win rate drops from 76% to just 43%. Godspeed.
Okay, and now a result that I'm sure didn't resonate whatsoever on the Bennett family group chat. Bournemouth 1, Liverpool 0, riding a freight train's worth of top 4 momentum after their 7-0 bludgeoning of Man United. Jurgen Klopp's mob head down for some South Coast grapple against a last-place Bournemouth team they beat 9-0 earlier this season. But in the 28th minute, cherry revenge! Bournemouth went ahead via a well-worked Philip Billing goal to take the lead. In the 70th minute, Liverpool rewarded a penalty that Mo Salah, of all people, sent miles left. I mean, just an astonishing miss. And with that, the War Cherries climb into 18th place, while Liverpool miss a massive opportunity in the top 4 race.
David, the one time I was supporting Liverpool because this was such a relegation moment, they do what to me? The champagne corks were still flying for that 7-0 demolition against Manchester United. But this was the hangover. The performance that Klopp had presaged in his pre-match comments when he said, the home table, we are in the top 4. But the away table, we are far, far away from that. And so it came to pass in this massive early morning game. Big for both teams. Bournemouth have been full of life, but empty of points in their struggle to knife their way out the relegation bear pit. 6 points again, separating 9 teams in that Premier League before kick-off, and Liverpool felt like they were surging. That's what we thought. We thought, wow, you're going to crack the top 4 with an easy win. Signature 2021 late run into the top 4 box. But remember, the counter-narrative, David, spewed by whom? Spewed by my Liverpool-supporting brother Nige within minutes of the final whistle of the 7-0 United game. He texted me, he said, I bet we're going to crap the bed next week against Bournemouth. And they did, David.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, that's
How
good.
did it happen? 9-0. 9-0 they'd won. 9-0. I mean, what? How?
It was Nigel's negativity in the Bennett family group chat. That's what caused it to happen.
Derby, mate.
That was it.
Do that before a derby, would you love? Don't waste it. Don't waste it on the Bournemouth. I mean, there were so many chances. Big Verge, 5 minutes, rising like a giant stroopwafel. Garbage. Jefferson Lerma nodding off the line. My eyes just solely on that relegation mire. God, I'd hoped that Arsenal's late comeback would have broken Bournemouth, but it hadn't. It hadn't. They just kept flickering with the light on the counter, that ball over the top. Utara charged down the right, just chronic defending everywhere. Philip Billing, such a smart finisher when given time and space. First shot on target, first goal. Cute Bournemouth fans singing. By the way, bottom of the table, Bournemouth fans singing, we score when we want. It was honestly harder for me to watch than it was seeing Ashley Graham interview Hugh Grant.
Oh my God, that was a moment. I saw that too. Oh, it was so awkward.
That's what it felt like, Davo. That's what it felt like for me watching this. It was, I mean, God, also because Liverpool fans know when their team concede, they lose. They've gone on to lose 7-12 this season. What happened with the penalty then? I mean, it shouldn't have been given. Should we agree on that? Adam Smith in that weird chicken wing jump, but from such close range, not looking. I mean, he needs, you can't jump with your, try now, listener, try and jump with your arm on the side and tell me if it doesn't go up a little bit. Shouldn't have been given, should it?
Yeah, we saw, and talking about consistency, we saw the same thing happen to Wesley Fofana, that he jumped on a free kick from Leicester and his arm went out a little bit, and it wasn't given for the same reason. Anytime you watch them reviewing these handballs and they don't ever watch in regular speed, they only watch in slow motion. Yeah. I always get this like horrible feeling. No, watch it in regular speed because it seems unfair. It didn't happen in slow motion. Yeah.
Yeah, they should do it double time, David. They should watch it in double speed. If it still looks like a penalty, then
they should give it in double speed. That would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, Bournemouth did this 4 times against Arsenal last week and not one was given. I mean, they are like the Kembe Mutombo shot blockers of the Premier League. And then, who steps up? Mo Salah, only Liverpool's record goal scorer all time. I will admit, Davo, I roared at the television, do it for Everton, Mo! Do it for Everton!
Oh, bad call.
What did he proceed to do? He did it for Everton in a way. I guess he misinterpreted me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Harry Kane level. It was a Harry Kane at the World Cup level miss.
It was Brett Mayer. It was, I mean, that ball, I believe, probably took out some invisible asteroids. I mean, it was, maybe he mistook the literal.
Oh, let's hope so.
When I said do it for Everton, maybe Mo heard just do it Everton style. And he did it. Did it. It was my fault. Klopp would, after the game, sadly say Mo scores goals. He scores a lot of goals, but he missed a penalty. That's life. And there's a lot of, seems simple, there's a lot of wisdom in there. In truth, Liverpool didn't look like scoring. I've got to say, if I wanted to watch a team from Merseyside play tedious, pedestrian, impotent football, I'd watch Everton. And I was left on my knees wondering, do you think Liverpool want to relegate Everton more than they crave Champions League football?
Yeah, maybe.
That was really the moral.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is.
I mean, Klopp said, we played Bournemouth's game, and they did, mindlessly. How narrative can change in a week. I'm old enough to remember when Liverpool were back, 7 against United, Now they look vulnerable again, a team that have only had 3 wins on the road in 13 league games. They now head to Madrid to be thrashed before a savage run of Premier League games. They play Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal. And my brother texted me at the final whistle with a shrug emoji. He just said, it's the LFC way. And then he followed up by saying, I think we used up all our goals for March in one game. God, it's just the Bennett gene. Bournemouth, though, second historic win against Liverpool. Before that was 1 win in 18 goals. Last 7 games, I think they'd lost 28 goals to 1. Out of the bottom 4. We are staying up. We are staying up, sang their delirious fans. And really the joy, the loveliest part of the day for Bournemouth fans, David Brooks' return, the Bournemouth midfielder back in a squad after 525 agonising days out after the 25-year-old was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin lymphoma back in October 2021. Big love to David Brooks and his family, and F cancer.
Absolutely. Tottenham 3, Nottingham Forest 1. Spurs coming in after being bounced from the Champions League by AC Milan in midweek. And they get a visit from Steve Cooper's tricky trees. In the end, a Harry Kane brace and a Sonny goal see Tottenham hand Forest the L. And as aggrieved as any Forest fans, the doctor who performed Antonio Conte's recent gallbladder surgery. He or she must have been shuddering as each goal went in and he celebrated with the heat of 1,000 suns. Spurs finished the weekend in 4th place, 4 clear of Newcastle.
What a difference 90 minutes can make. 1 week good, 1 week bad, continued at Tottenham. Team limped in, beleaguered after an insipid Champions League exit against Milan. You know, Tottenham fans foaming. How can we have Kane and Kulu and Richie and Sonny and fail to muster a single goal home or away? And just a darkness, a realisation that 15-year silverware drought will continue. Antonio Conte wobbling in. Full Anton Chigger, no country for all men mode, just casually attacking Spurs fans. It's their fault, their impatience with regard to trophies, which is just creating a toxic atmosphere. Things felt dark, David, ahead of this one. Just a feeling that Tottenham would plummet out the top 4 spots. Liverpool are coming, and Richarlison, God love him, should never have left Everton. He told Brazilian television that the season was, quote, that he's not been given minutes, and Conte casually retorted, yes, his season has been and he's right. His season's not good because he's had injuries. If he deserves to play, I'll give him the opportunity. And lo and behold, remarkable bit of man management. Conte gave Richie the start, chance to either thrive or embarrass himself. Could he do the banging part after chatting shite or something like that? I'm not sure how it works. It almost felt like Conte wanted Richie to play like crap and prove his point. But my God, he was magnificent. He showed he's got a very particular set of skills which he's acquired over a very long career, skills that make him a nightmare for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, not all of them legal in the football code, but certainly a set of skills. Yeah, and he came out and he was just ready to fire.
From the opening couple of minutes, he was a lunatic. First 3 minutes, scored a banger. First Spurs Premier League goal. VAR'd off, though, for no clear reason. I actually believe Conte asked them to VAR it off himself for reason. Richie, undeterred, then set up Harry Kane's opener, then drew a penalty. Kane slipped in through with a fine nutmeg pass. Kane thrashed home that penalty. His first since that one in which he Mo Sala'd into outer space at the World Cup. Kane now hit 20 Premier League goals in a single campaign for the 6th time, 6-season wonder, Davo. And when you realise that in that time, he's often been Spurs' only real threat for opponents to shut down, it's an incredible feat.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched the midweek game. I watched this game. It's honestly like watching 2 different clubs play football. Of course, the opposition, with all due respect to Nottingham Forest, AC Milan were superb in both legs of that Champions League tie. Fikayo Tomori especially, wow, can't believe Chelsea ever let him go. But yeah, Tottenham back again and solidify their hold on 4th place.
Yeah, that third goal, Richie slapping a delicious ball in for Sonny. Magical first touch to create space for himself, a crevice. Antonio Conte charging down the sideline. You could hear the stitches popping with every step. And no doubt Conte loved the pain. Forest, God, their slow starting just kills them, as does only scoring 4 away goals all season. That will do you in. A dark day this, heavy loss, slipping back towards the relegation zone. 3 points off it once again. And news that Brennan Johnson, Ariel Helwani's poster boy, is facing a scan after limping off with some groin knack. Newcastle away on Friday. But this was a massive win for Spurs, David. They looked shockingly like a team again, a collective with an idea of where the goal is, keep that drive alive, reset the narrative of Dune. Conte said, I've seen the fire in my players' eyes today. How do you understand it, though? Because it's slightly insane. Conte's clearly leaving at the very latest at the end of this season. The club still feel like they're treading water. Rumour mill has Kane both going to United or that they're going to, Tottenham are going to let Kane have key decisions made over the club's future, so that it'll stay like some kind of English Mbappe at PSG, striker, captain, CEO. Well, how do you understand it, David?
I love those key decisions. How exactly would you like us to fire Antonio Conte? Would you like a public humiliation? Would you like him to be beaten at halftime of our final game of the season? Put in the stops.
You're going to walk nude down Tottenham Way while people throw apples. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. I mean, I don't understand Tottenham this season, even with all of the distraction of what's happening with their manager. It's just very hard to look at that team and see the performances week to week. I mean, in some ways, you could look at it glass half full and say it's remarkable that they continue to bounce back and find ways to get these performances after playing so poorly the week before. There's, of course, the glass half empty way of looking at it as well. It's just tough to know. But they're in fourth for now. I still think they're going to be there or thereabouts at the end of the season. But without Harry Kane, you just wonder where that team's going to go.
In terms of what is next managerially, Pochettino and Thomas Tuchel are said to be in Tottenham's thoughts with Conte's exit looming. David, quickly, would you take Pochettino to Electric Boogaloo?
I mean, as somebody with experience of managerial returns, having seen Mourinho do it at Chelsea, yes, it can work. It can work. It can work temporarily. This would be more redemption for Mauricio Pochettino if he could come back and win silverware for Tottenham after his inglorious exit. I think he's a superb manager. I would have taken him at Chelsea, any time over the last three changes. So I would have him. I also would have Tuchel. I think he's proven himself to be a very good Premier League manager. I think either of them would be superb.
I don't think Tuchel would actually come unless Spurs do lock up Champions League football. It's just not his blueprint, his modus without. But I've got to say, if I was a Spurs fan, I would take Thomas Frank in a heartbeat if I was proper Spurs. That manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Leicester City 1, Chelsea 3. Talking of managers, Chelsea's current and their future manager meet in a clash of disappointing seasons. And despite each side's middling form, some incredible goals in this one, Roger. Well taken, if slightly fortunate, Belden Chilwell volley for Chelsea, the opener. A Patson Daka master blaster for Leicester. A silky Argentinian to German alley-oop from Enzo to Kai. And a Kova scissor kick from a Modric assist. In the end, Chelsea win it comfortably. Pulley, he's officially returned. He came on. And the team is starting to ingest morsels of momentum after 3 wins in the last 8 days.
Chelsea is back. Graham Potter's death rattle been drowned out by his nice guy Raw. 2 big boy wins on the run going into this one. Goals, I crap you not, in the plural. And travelling to Leicester, who had not so much as summoned the shot on target in their previous 2 games. This is what Chelsea fans needed. The Burley Revolution will be televised. Koulibaly sent over a cross. Belden Chilwell surging again. Post-injuries, deliciously first-time Chelsea flow when their full-back surge. We've always said it. And both Chilwell and Reece James, my lord, so imperious, but also very, very injury-prone. I did love Chilwell hitting the knee slide celly in front of his old fans, but Leicester, credit them, responded well, up their intensity. Patson Daka lashed home. Chelsea back, narrative disruptor. But Chelsea do not wilt, responding with a haymaker of their own. David, this goal, Enzo Fernandez to Kai Havertz, delicious dink, sweet soft finish, goal of the season contender. Kai reinforcing his brilliance with really a muted, no big deal, no selly. Some exquisite wonder though. Do you think Todd Burley has been coaching them, showing them like classic Clippers Lob City?
Yeah, I mean, this won't be a goal of season contender. But it really was, justifiably lauded. A fantastic pass, a fantastic piece of vision, fantastic run, fantastic finish. I mean, you remarked on it. Chelsea having Chilwell and Reece James back means that they can play that 3 at the back. They can get Fofana in his natural position, advancing the ball. They suddenly look offensively so solid, but it's perhaps that 4-box in midfield that releases space for Kai Havertz, that, not a genuine number 9, but it's suddenly Kai, in these last 3 games, he's been a completely different player than we've seen for the rest of the season. And this, it was the finish of a very, very confident footballer.
Yeah, and the game, actually more of a rumble than the final scoreline suggests. Referee really let mayhem fly. Ricardo took out João Felix. Marte, I think it was, went through Kai Havertz's chest. Finally gave Voot a red, which really finished the game as a contest. Massive Mudryk knee slide, Selly on an offside goal. God bless, didn't see the flag.
Good finish, though.
Celebration seems to go on forever. Even the referee, I love that. Even the referee was like, tranquilo. Hey. Chelsea doesn't celebrate real goals, just the fake ones. But their third goal, Davo, a work of art. Mudryk, we should acknowledge, involved, headed a fine Havertz ball back to Kovacic for the finish. First time Chelsea had scored 3 times in a game since October. Finally, that XG is translating to GG, and Leicester, one joy of the day. Gary Lineker actually in the crowd, and a Leicester fan spent the whole game just chanting his name, which was lovely. But for Chelsea, momentum, energy, but still 10th, baby. But,
solidified. Bite your arm off for 10th at the end of the season.
Got it.
It's the reverse curse of George. Ever since I took my son to Stamford Bridge, 3-game winning streak. Excellent midweek performance and win against Dortmund, we should say, to take them into the top 8. We're top 10 in England, Rog. 10th place in England, but we're in the top 8 in Europe. Do that math. They're playing a shape. Graham Potter has found something. He's found a way that he can get his team to play. Players are slotting in, even when, Reece James not available. Ruben Loftus-Cheek can slot in and play that right-back role. Pulley comes in naturally, fits into that sort of inside left position after Mudryk goes off. It's nice. He's finding something.
3 wins on the run, quarter-final in the Champions League. Good week at the office for Graham Potter, which is lovely. But this game did make me realise, I don't know how we've never thought about what a Brodge-Burley partnership would be like, David. I mean, that would be so much machismo. I'm not sure if it would be like Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., but truly awful. Just the two of them together, David. That would be... I'd love to see it. It'd be a partnership that would almost certainly have its own kind of buddy custom belt buckles.
In many ways, I think these are 2 very similar men. They're almost too similar.
What, your favourite Frank Sinatra song's My Way as well? What are the odds?
Newcastle 2, Wolves 1. The Toon limp into this without a win in 5 games in all comps, desperately needing 3 points to present falling further adrift of the top 4. And they get it here thanks to an Alexander Isak header from a Kieran Trippier free kick and a 79th minute winner from who else? Jack Grealish's diss track muse with his 11th goal of the season, none other than Miguel Almiron. Newcastle stay 4 behind Spurs in that race for next season's Champions League spots.
Yeah, Wolves, team with the most impotent goal-scoring record, travel to face Newcastle, the club who conceded the least in all 4 divisions. But it has been a wobble. Really, Newcastle, or Saudi Newcastle, in name only, 3 straight defeats all comps, almost 2 months since they'd won a top-flight game. Some relief and cacophony then when Alexander Isak got his head brilliantly, 26 minutes, to a stunning pinpoint trademark free kick from Kieran Trippier. It was stunning. The wiry Swede pushed off his marker, Otto. First goal in 340 long minutes for Newcastle. Eddie Howe said proper Newcastle number 9's goal. But Lopetegui's Wolves, tenacious, struck in the second half, 57 seconds after coming on. Hwang picked up on some Trippier slop, lives to punish the Toon, that man. I think he scored 3 goals in 44 appearances versus every other team, but 3 times in 4 games against the Toon. But then Wolves went 2-5 at the back. Tried to get out with a point and were punished for that caution. Oh, mate, the ever-smiling Miguel Almiron trotted on. He'd been dropped for the first time from Newcastle's starting 11 and responded to that snub. Like Sonny, really, by giving them the win in the 79th minute, drove into the box, smashed home a deflection, aided shot, reeled away. 11th Premier League goal of the season. Incredible, Dave. And I loved watching him run to the sideline, roar, face on him, roar like Scarface. Just the look of a man absolutely in love with the club, the city, the football fans, the Premier League opportunity, all of it. And it is magnificent to see him from MLS to the Premier League thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. A great goal, great finish. And just every time I watch Miguel Almiron play, I can't imagine any other player doing the same things that he's doing in the same way. He's a very unique Premier League footballer.
When you took him aside on stage in Atlanta and gave him a few tips, Dave,
Exactly.
I look at him, I'm like, Dave, he follows everything. We
go.
can't tell you what it was. They were secrets, but there's a reason he's thriving. Wolves, 13th place. That's the good news. Bad news, just 3 points above the bottom three in this flat old chart of a relegation mire. Enormous win, though, for Newcastle. 5th. Leapfrog over Liverpool, 4 points behind Spurs, 2 games in hand now. By the way, I do need to mention this story of the week from Newcastle perspective for me anyway. Anthony Gordon, God bless, somehow still feels aggrieved at Everton fans, upset that he, quote, played a massive part in keeping Everton up last season and was hurt by the lack of credit the club showed him after his $58 million move to Newcastle. Apparently upset, Davo. Still angry. Still sitting there seething, flicking the light off, light on in the corner of his apartment in Newcastle because of the 59-word statement that Everton used to announce his departure. The club just said he'd left after submitting a formal transfer request. He goes, I won the manager's player of the year. So for them to not really show me any credit, it hurts. It hurts a little bit, yes. And GFOP Carl McGlynn into this to say, Devo, was the praise we soaked on him at the Men in Blazers live show with Everton Football Club in Washington, D.C. not enough for the lad?
Yeah, maybe not. Who was it who wanted that birthday, who got very upset when he wasn't given a good enough birthday cake by the club?
Yeah, Toure.
Man City was, yeah, right.
This is worse, though. I needed a bigger goodbye. I got all the cash and the big move that I chose to force, but at 59 words, lads, you can give me 60 plus, right? I mean, God, I've got to say, outside of Nate in Ted Lasso, I've rarely seen a Premier League player take such an arch heel turn.
Oh, dear. Leeds United 2, Brighton 2, a good old-fashioned shootout as relegation embroiled Leeds get a visit from European hopefuls Brighton, and it was the Seagulls who shot out in front thanks to Argentina's leading SPF enthusiast Matthew McAllister. He's the entire market, Rog. But wait for it. Leeds would pull level through a deflected Patrick Bamford banger. Are there any other kind of Patrick Bamford bangers? Then, in the second half, a pair of Jack Harrison physics-defying goals. One into his own net and one into the opposition's. They leave it knotted at 2 apiece. Brighton are 7th. Leeds, meanwhile, are 19th, separated from safety by 1 point and goal differential.
Yeah, the foot of Jack Harrison both giveth and then taketh away, just in his own box, slapped the ball home with his left instead of using his weaker right foot. And that agony followed by Jack Harrison, who'd already done the own goal, just delivering the goal combo inside 20 minutes, short corner, picked up the ball on the corner of the area, lashed it home. It was like watching a Steph Curry look away 3. Own goal, Davo, goal. Man was just one red card away from the John Joe Shelby hat-trick.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was not his last contribution in the game. The tying goal must have felt like a winner for those Leeds fans. It was just excellent.
Yeah, a winner, but also, God, sometimes a point is massive. And I'd take a point against De Zerbi's high-flying, European-chasing, big-dreaming Brighton. But in context for Leeds and their new manager, Javi Gracia, who benched Weston McKennie ahead of this one, is trying to fight for balance within his team. They attack with less swashbuckle, more calm intensity, but still have that same defensive lapse willingness, which has undermined the last 2 managers. They will have got off the field, felt great about that point, but then realised, big picture, 2 big points dropped. In context, when Bournemouth won, and even that Doom team that rhymes with Weatherton, when they won their games, this draw probably felt, on retrospect, like a terrifying reverse gear back into that relegation zone. Wolves back into that relegation zone. I think Wolves are next. They've got relegation 6-pointers against Crystal Palace and Forest coming up in the next 4 games. The other one there is against Arsenal. And I think that run of competition, the next 4 games for Leeds, is going to be season defining.
Okay, Rog, West Ham won, Aston Villa won. The Irons earn a hard-fought point in this claret and blue derby, and it's enough for them to claw their way out of the drop zone, and they had to come from behind to do it after a 17th minute Ollie Watkins header put the away side in front, but just 9 minutes later, Said Benrahma pulled the Hammers level from the spot. He was really bright throughout this game, Benrahma, and in the end, a valuable point for his side, Rog. When an invisible asteroid hits planet Earth, it may just be select insects and David Moyes that survive.
I hope so. I love that. Would make me so happy if David Moyes was the last human being left on Earth. There's something very beautiful and fitting about that. God, but West Ham, thriving in Europe, struggling so badly in the Premier League. Said Benrahma slapped that equaliser penalty, on which I've got to say there was disconcertingly little shithousery from Emi Martinez. I don't know. I've never seen that before. It's very weird. But bar that, West Ham so bloody wasteful. Final whistle, met by boos for that lack of clinicality. You know, West Ham have to win games at home. Their away form has been dire. They've got to get the max at home. And their next home games, I think Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, Newcastle. But the point got them out the bottom three, only on goal difference. 2 wins in their last 14. That is relegation form. Very weird ending to this one, Dave. 2 minutes before the final whistle. Never sure why this doesn't happen more. Some joker in the crowd had brought their own whistle to the game and decided to blow it really loudly, towards the end. And several thousand West Ham fans just like lemmings, just booed very loudly and then left with the game still going on. Which is, football fans and sheep, they've got more in common than we like to imagine, right, David?
Yeah, that is incredible. I didn't notice that in the game.
Pavlov's dog just getting up and booing and going. No, the game's still quite happily going on, but I just love, that's a whistle. Boo!
Okay, Rog, here we go. Everton 1, Brentford 0. What a weekend for you, just 35 seconds into this one. Your favourite Everton player. A player you've spoken so glowingly. No, not only never said a bad word about him, you've just spoken so glowingly about him all season. Dwight McNeil, one of your favourites ever. Perhaps one of your, up there with Tony Hibbert, one of your favourite ever Everton players. Absolutely lashed one into the Brentford net. The kind of strike hit so cleanly, it had almost no spin. You told me it was going to happen. You could almost see the logo as the ball flew into the net, and from there, somehow you were able to keep the bees at bay to collect all 3 points. Everton finished the weekend in 15th place, a single point clear of the relegation zone.
I've rarely felt less confident about anything in my life. Into that Goodison Park, pit trauma. In came Brentford, a small and fashionable club, yes, but my lord, the opposite of us. They have a strategy, they have sensible alignment, they've got intelligent transfers, they've got just a brilliant everything. Longest unbeaten streak in the top flight, Davo. Brentford, they hadn't lost in 12 games, they hadn't lost since October the 23rd, and the game was about to kick off. I was sitting there with my youngest son, Ozzy, who's taking the season very hard. And just before kick-off, he turned to me in a very little voice, very little. He was almost scared to say it. I said, "What?" He said, "Dad." I was like, "What?" And he just looked at me in my eyes with fear. He said, "Let's try and be quietly confident." I'll be honest with you.
Are you a Bennett?
Yeah, no, I honestly, I'll be honest. I thought the kid was an idiot. Honestly, in that moment, I swear, when he said that, Davo, I was just, it was all I could do to not be like, what are you talking about? Where do you even get these, where do you get these fantastical, these flights of quietly confident my are? But within a minute, Davo, this strange new magical approach.
Yeah.
It paid off.
Yeah, what a finish from Dwight McNeil, a player who I'm not sure that sometimes I've thought, as you've been so negative about Dwight McNeil this season, it's just because I've been positive about him in the past. He's a player I've always rather coveted. The young, I believe he qualifies to play for Jamaica through one of his parents, Rog. I think he's just got quality. He's got a a left foot of pure gold.
But there's
Another Dwight McNeil.
We have that makes sense. But there is a file that Everton's recruitment officers have. It's rather large. It's called players who score really good goals against us, and we always then go and sign them
I see.
without actually noticing that they never score against anybody else. 36 seconds though. Decore, fantastic reborn. We broke through him. And you're right, David. It was Shite McNeil. Confidently rifled at home. I think Sean Dyche is like saying, just think you're playing against Everton, even when you're playing for them, lad. And inside 1 minute, 36 seconds, Goodison rocking, Shite McNeil. I never said a bad word about you, Shite McNeil. I never called you the single worst player ever to pull on an Everton jersey. I said Shite McNeil legend. I was ripping my shirt off, running around the house with Ozzy. We were both like, what WTF did we just do? Davo, we didn't just score a big goal, a big boy goal even. We scored a big boy goal too early.
Yeah, well, it wasn't too early. It was, I think, when you're in a relegation scrap, maybe you can't score too early. This was
Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
You've got to know, there's always, in joy as an Everton fan, there's always, within a second, just a darkness, which is the twin of Everton wonder, conjoined twin. When we do something good, you immediately realise, oh crap, we've led against Leeds, Brentford, United, Wolves, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, and we haven't won any of those games. What did we just do? We had something to lose. We will lose it. But my lord, Everton were confident. They were competent. They were knocking it ball around. They were hunting in packs. They pressed. We knew we needed a second. We should have gotten it. Number of chances for a stroke of halftime. VAR totally screwed Everton. Just an excruciating forensic accounting. If it takes that long to decide that Damari Gray had handled the ball on the way into net, then it cannot be clear and obvious. But my lord, we held on into that second half, which was just an agony. Brentford had all of the possession. Everton were resilient. McNeil, the hero again. Shite McNeil scooped the ball off the line. Green Heron Jim tweeted with a goal and a ball off the line. Rodgers' most hated player suddenly becomes the greatest Dwight since Eisenhower, and it is true. Momentum with Brentford. We defended deeper and deeper. I think we had 8% possession in the last 15 minutes. Sean Dyche, he loves edging. No subs till the very end. It was hard to watch. Took years off my life. At the same time, Davo, I've never been more alive.
I love it. It was clear, it was obvious, but it just took a very long time to figure out. Well, I'm happy for you. When I'm seeing when I saw that result hold by the end of 90 minutes, I was very happy for you and the entire Bennett clan, Rog. This was excellent.
Amazing moment towards the end where Seamus Coleman was fouled deep in his own half, but celebrated being fouled as if he'd just scored a worldie.
Well, there you go.
That is how desperate we were, and we still in a relegation fight. We still have miles to go before we sleep. This Premier League is such a cluster at the bottom. This Premier League is mad. The storylines of Inception are more comprehensible than the relegation battle in this Premier League. Brentford, we should say, lose for the first time since October. Incredible overachieving feat that their fans should savour, should marvel at the job they've done, even as that record disappears. Everton fans, though, just say, God, you know, we said last week we are only allowed to microdose on happiness. And my Everton supporting mate, the final whistle went, shirt was off, beers everywhere. You know, I'm getting a tattoo this week to say, let's be confidently let's be humbly optimistic, or whatever it was that Ozzy said. And just Scott texted me within seconds of the final whistle. And he said, God, I've just looked ahead to the schedule. El Blazerico next weekend. Mm-hmm. We hit, the text read, we hit Chelsea right as they hit form. Then Monday night, under the lights at Spurs, guaranteed Richarlison winner. United away. Then Marco Silva, our ex-manager's Fulham, off to Selhurst for our annual shocker. Then home against Newcastle for Gordon's only ever career goal for Newcastle. And it's all true. It will all happen. And I realise, Dave, happiness for Everton fans, like draft picks for Chicago Bears, things we know will ultimately waste away. But this is the key stat. Sean Dyche already won as many Premier League games with Everton as Frank Lampard did in 20 games. Sean, incredible. I loved in the press conference, he was asked, how's Dominic Calvert-Lewin? How's his mindset? And he said, he seems all right to me. He's given me a few fashion ideas and he's pointed me in the right direction. Davo, what possible fashion advice do you think that ginger bastard's taken on board from DCL?
I don't know. I really don't know. I hope he's not taking on too much advice from DCL right now. DCL needs to really focus on getting back in the lineup and scoring goals with that salary, Rog.
Do you think he's like, boss, there is a kind of underwear that's not made out of recycled burlap sacks. You may want to consider it. I can't think of what else it could be. And if anybody else knows or can even conceive of it, meninblazers@gmail.com.
Okay, before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week. Tuesday, we got a new episode of European Nights with Rory Smith. Wednesday, we do it live at a special time of 6 p.m. Eastern Time, right after Real Madrid versus Liverpool in the Champions League. Thursday, it's Vamos, presented by Bud Light, episode 2. And Friday, it's WGFOP. What a week, Rog. Can we get a toast to bring us home?
Oh, yes, we can. I want to raise this shot of Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass, to the piece of ginger root which went viral across Argentina last week because it looks eerily like Emi Martinez's save against France's Kolo Muani in the death of the World Cup final. If you look at it, each stem looks exactly like the angle of Emi's spread arms and hands. And I look at it and I'm like, I love football. I love the emotions it creates. I even love how a herbaceous perennial can make a nation savour the collective memories it shared. That ginger, Argentina's most popular ginger since Alexis McAllister.
Okay, Rog, you can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, at Rog Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, on Facebook, Men in Blazers, Twitch, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. We're on YouTube. You can see a video version of our podcast, including this podcast, which we'll release in full. That is right, from the opening to the close. Check it out on our YouTube right now. Also, our TikTok at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. Venderpunk, Rog.
War Pig!
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balds win, Balds win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balds lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Davo.
Love you, Rog.
Anthony Gordon, stop being such a Karen. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.